Now, as we know, in recent years, conversations around domestic and family violence have become more mainstream. We have had a lot of them on this show. Now more people are aware of what constitutes abuse. But a new report has shown that when it comes to economic abuse, most Australians have trouble identifying what it looks like and how to get help. The report from the Centre for Women's Economic Safety outlines 20 scenarios that constitute economic abuse and surveyed around 1,000 people about whether they could recognise them. It found that nearly 37% had experienced at least one indicator of economic abuse. But despite this, 31% of respondents couldn't explain economic abuse very well. And although most who experience other forms of abuse also experience economic abuse, 29% didn't know where to turn to for support. Now, for more on this, we're joined by founder of the Centre for Women's Economic Safety and author of the report, Rebecca Glenn. Welcome back to The Drum.
Thanks for having me.
Now, can you explain to us what are the major indicators of economic abuse?
It's a difficult question because it is so individual.
Yes.
But often you often see behaviours go across three categories. So it could be restricting access to economic resources, it could be sabotage, or it could be exploitation. So some really common ones are restricting access to cash for necessities or access to bank accounts, sabotaging employment, keeping someone from having a job or going to study, and running up debts in another person's name. But I guess what's really important about any of these behaviours is that they're almost never happening in isolation,
right,
and almost always happening alongside other forms of abuse.
Mm-hmm. Which is usually control, right? It's usually coercive control.
That's right, and economic abuse is a really central part of coercive control because it's so effective. We all know that really to do anything in society these days you need money, and so that's why it's so often a focus for perpetrators in exerting their control over a partner.
Now, as you've highlighted in the report, a lot of people don't fully understand it, and I wonder if is it partly because some of these indicators can appear to be quite innocuous. A partner's hidden money from you or made you use your money to pay for things you don't need. People might think, oh, well, have ways to dismiss that. Is that
I think that's absolutely at the heart of why it's so difficult to understand, is that it's so important to understand the context.
Yep.
And so you could see a relationship where actually a couple has agreed that we're on a really tight budget, and so what we're going to do is we're going to sit down at the end of the week and show each other our receipts. Alternatively, and what would probably constitute abuse, is when a partner says, you will show me your receipts or you will not get pocket money next week. And that is designed to humiliate the other person and restrict them and control them. So on the surface, you could talk about those two behaviours being the same, and in practice, very, very different.
Now, Tata, you've experienced economic abuse. What form did that take, and did you realise what was going on?
I think you definitely don't realise it at the beginning, and I didn't.
Yep.
Because like we were talking about with coercive control, it's a pattern of behaviour, it's established over time, it's something that slowly creeps up. So it might start with, oh, I'll pay these bills to help you out because you've got lots of going on, and then it's like, oh, well, why don't I take them on and take that load off you? Mm-hmm. So it's always wrapped, well, not always, quite often wrapped in a package of, I'm helping you, I'm making things better.
And it's a trusting relationship, and who wants to fill out, pay the bills, right?
And like, I hate doing tax, so if someone says, hey, I'll take that on, it's like, fantastic. That's one pressure I don't have to think about. Yeah. So I think it's really difficult because it can be as simple as I'll go guarantor on a loan, but then I will control everything you do about having that loan. Yeah. Like, you'll have to sell your house or you need to do what I want you to do. It could be that they, like with sabotage, my partner we used to work together. So we had a situation where finances were unclear from the person who booked us and the other person. And so what I said, let's meet in the middle. Let's both take the loss. And his position was, no, absolutely not. Don't want to do that. And then that put us in a difficult position. So therefore we lost all future business from that place. Yeah, wow. So it can be really subtle. It builds up and there's so many layers to it as well.
So how did you realise? Like, was this kind of dawning upon you? How did that happen?
I think I didn't realise until I left. Mm-hmm. And that was when I was in a group with other people and they were talking, and I'm sort of thinking, hang on, could that be economic abuse for me, or financial abuse as it's also known? Yep. And then it wasn't until I actually started speaking about it that the penny dropped, and it was like, hang on, these weren't just incidental incidents. There's a lot of incidents that actually show that it was financial abuse.
Part of a pattern. Is that experience common?
That is such a familiar pattern and experience, and so we're really keen to improve recognition so that people are able to name it earlier. But so often it's not until you've left the relationship, the financial damage, becomes apparent that you're actually sort of got a name for what has been happening, and the fact that so many of those indicators do seem innocuous, provides cover for perpetrators. Often, I don't know about in your case, but you look back and you realise what seemed innocuous was deliberate, and it's only in retrospect that you're actually recognising each step was deliberate. I lost more control, more transparency, or more being able to see what was actually going on with each of those steps.
And it makes it harder to leave.
Yeah.
So you go,
I was just saying, and you actually have a gut reaction to what's going on, but you can't work it out. And we speak to each other, oh, you're just having cold feet, or you're just worried because you've had that experience before, or you're just, he's being really lovely, he's being really... So we actually minimise what someone's saying, their gut is saying, and even if there's not obvious evidence at the beginning, we're not taking in and going, hang on, what's your gut saying? Let's go back. Let's listen to that. Let's see if we can put something together for it.
And Karen, often the first point of contact is GPs who can try to work out what their clients are going through and if, in fact, this is one of the factors. But it must be incredibly hard to work out if financial abuse is occurring.
Well, I think that there is, like with many forms of abuse, there's a certain level of shame that people feel if they are seen to be the victim of abuse. And the other thing too is that this is something that has been fairly recently recognised and articulated, and that's why this research is so very important. Now, GPs are well trained in being able to see the signs of physical or sexual or emotional or psychological abuse, and of course economic abuse quite often goes along with any one or a combination of these types of abuse. And so I guess with GPs we would need to be looking at adding economic abuse or financial abuse into the types of abuse that needs to be on our radar. And of course, patients need to have a high level of trust in their GP to be able to disclose what they're going through. I think it's really important that GPs also have referral pathways so that if we do recognise that somebody's suffering from this form of abuse, that there is a place that we can refer people so that they can get the help that they need, the support that they need, quite often without economic support, that they may need to get mainstream kind of services because they may not be able to be seen to be paying for private services, for example.
Yeah, I reckon this is a really important report because there's so many things in there that you haven't traditionally thought of, or you put down to maybe traditional gender roles, to, the bloke might, if someone's earning more, they might say that they're going to do the finances, and that can lead to a vulnerability we don't expect. Adrian, what do you make of it? And do reading reports like this make you think, okay, I do actually might know some people who've gone through this?
Yeah. It is interesting because I'm certainly aware of it. I'm certainly not qualified to speak from experience. That's for sure. So I say that at the outset.
Sure.
But what we probably more generally know as emotional abuse and psychological abuse, a lot of it is economic. If you can hang that over somebody's head that you've got no superannuation and all the superannuation's in my super fund, so if you leave me, that's economic abuse, but I think more generally probably known as recognised as emotional abuse. But I think reports like this are really important because it's important that everybody knows about it, so that if you see it happening to your sister or to your neighbour or whatever, you can call it out for what it is.
Yeah, and you might go, okay, let's look and see if there's any other patterns here. Rebecca, talk to me about gender here. I was very interested to see that it's actually quite high, the number of men. Normally there's a big discrepancy when it comes to domestic abuse, and there's significantly more women than there are men. This, it was like 40% of women reported and 33% of men having experienced one of the indicators of economic abuse. What do you think's going on?
I think there's probably a couple of things to unpack. So the majority of research that's been done in this space has been with cisgendered heterosexual women experiencing domestic violence in domestic violence shelters. So this is a very unusual report in that it's looked at men and women. I think the second thing to say is that all of those indicators that we've talked about may point to economic abuse or not. It may just point to an unhealthy money relationship, or it could even be a healthy money relationship. The important, I guess, question to ask is it part of a repeated pattern? Is it happening alongside other forms of abuse? Is it limiting a person's autonomy, and is it harming them financially? So I think those kind of criteria need to be wrapped around, and this didn't sort of get a chance to get into that much detail. There's certainly been some research overseas that suggests men and women do view money in relationships differently. So it's much more common for women to think of money in relationships as the household's money, and much more common for men to think my money is my money and I'll make a contribution. So I think there's a lot more to unpack about cultural expectations of money in relationships and how men and women conceptualise economic abuse differently.
As well as literacy, right? Just financial literacy.
Yeah, financial literacy is a really interesting one. I think if we were to develop our financial and relational literacy better and get better at having money conversations, we might be more alert to some signs of economic abuse earlier. But I think we need to be really careful about the limits of what financial literacy can achieve. And I say this on the basis of the number of women who have presented to me who work in finance, some of the most financially savvy women I know.
Right.
And that's not going to prevent a perpetrator deciding they're going to take control of
because
their
it's
life.
within an abusive, and so the women aren't realising that that's abuse. That's right. Is that what's going on if someone's very literate and conscious of where their money's going?
And they may be absolutely conscious of what's going on, or it may dawn slowly because actually a lot of the abuse was hidden. So an example of a woman who finally left an abusive husband and then was sued by his business partner because she was the director of the company that she had no idea that she was. So these things don't unfold in a linear fashion, and that makes it difficult to respond.
Do you think, Tali, that more surveys like these, conversations like this, more understanding would have helped you?
Absolutely. I think if this was the conversation that was being had at the time. So I was actually aware of it, something not being right when I was engaged, and I actually gave them the ring back. And I said, I'm not doing this. And people were counselling me, so I was in a church as well. Oh, no, you're just getting cold feet. Oh, no, you're just worried about it because you've experienced it before. Or, oh, no, it's just, you know. No one actually said to me, hey, what's up? Let's talk. What do you need? And I think that's one of the big problems, I think, when we're looking at this. So if we're like these discussions that we're having are brilliant, and the more that we can have it across the nation, even across the world, to make sure that people know what the signs are, know what the red flags are, know what the pattern is, then there's going to be more awareness, and there'll be more awareness in their peer groups as well. So bystanders can come along and say, hey, I'm not so happy about how that person's treating you. Could we have a conversation?
Yeah, someone told me the other day a story about someone who got an email every time his wife was spending money as an alert. Is that kind of thing? It's just hard to fathom, but right, it's that kind of thing.
Technology is being used as well. I mean, the banks have really jumped on it, which has been one of the sort of good responses that we've seen. That you know, abusive partners were using the descriptions in bank transfers to send abusive messages as they transfer 1 cent to their partner or ex-partner. So you know, wherever there's technology platforms, you know, they find a way.
Tell us about what is being done by financial institutions and other groups to deal with this.
So I think the response has gotten a lot better. What we're beginning to see is, particularly with the banks, we're seeing them train up staff to understand domestic and family violence better. They have specialist teams so that either a financial counsellor can call on someone's behalf, or victims can talk to someone who actually understands domestic abuse and get help with the debts and so on, or separating accounts, whatever it is. I think there is a lot more that can be done, and this awareness is important because it might be a doctor who is the person that sort of realises something's going on. I was talking with mortgage brokers the other day, the number of times that they're assessing a loan and it becomes apparent that one of the, you know, one party in the couple has no idea about all of these debts which are suddenly surfaced because of credit reports that need to be looked at to take out a joint loan. So I think there are a number of touch points.
So should they be doing something, mortgage brokers?
I don't think they need to be doing something. I think they need to be aware of it and know where to refer people. I don't think they should become, be expected to. But if they're aware of it and can say, look, just as a standard kind of procedure for any loan application, here's a range of information that could be useful if you're at a point in time where you're looking at your finances. And that information can include, we're developing a website that specifically addresses some of the ways people can be made vulnerable to economic abuse and look at what are some of the things that they need to be thinking about. So, we could include those resources in key touch points. No one has to sort of become an expert in domestic violence, but it's just about getting information to people at the moment that they're making critical decisions which are going to impact.
Buying houses, going through divorces, all those kinds of things.
Having children, leaving work, all of that.
I know some of the banks have put things in place to protect women, and we actually got to work with Commonwealth Bank to create a financial assistance hub. So basically it's to help women and other victims who've left domestic and family violence, and they'll be able to get financial support and training and all of that. So I know a lot of banks are starting to do things like that, which I think is really important too.
Well, good on you, Rebecca, for all that work. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Rebecca Glenn is the founder of the Centre for Women's Economic Safety. Now, if you've been affected by anything we've been discussing, you can call Lifeline 13 11 14 or 1800 RESPECT on 1800 737 732.